Good evening, everyone. The hour is 5:30. Welcome to the regular meeting of your Danville City Commission this evening, March the 26th, 2018. I believe we have quorum. I'll call us to order, and I will ask that we be led in prayer. Commissioner Caudle.
I did last time, but I'll do it again.
Mr. Atkins.
I'll be glad to. I thought your feet don't color because he was the last one to get here. But if you'll bow with me, and I'm going to ask this evening that while I pray silently to the, my God, you take the opportunity this afternoon to pray silently to your God. Amen. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you, sir. We have a fun treat for all of us here tonight. We're going to be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Aleah Stigall, and we're also going to be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by the KSD Culinary team who are with us, these lovely young ladies in front in the pink. And so, Aleah, if you'll come up and join us. And ladies, if you will come up and just line up right in front of us here. And if you'll do this, your sign language to the audience. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Excellent. How about that? Yeah. If you would, please. We got another pin for you. Got all this bling going on here. Thank you, dear. All right. Well, you want to stay up here with us a minute? You can. Here, have my chair. Have at it, right there. Hey, Queen Royalty, what are you going to do? Sit down, sweetie. Go ahead.
Push it.
You have... It's fun. If you can't have fun, go home. You have in front of you tonight's agenda. I trust it meets with everyone's approval. Yes. Seeing that, I'll go to item 1, and that is the minutes of the previous meeting, that being, excuse me, thank you. I do this all the time. We're in this part of our meeting called Hear the Public, and this is the public's opportunity to address the commissioner staff on any item that is on the agenda. There'll be an opportunity later for any public comment on any other items. So anyone? Seeing none, I'll go back where I was. The agenda meets everyone's approval. Is that correct?
Yes.
Then I'll ask for your approval of the minutes of March 12th. I'll entertain a motion at your convenience.
I move that we approve the minutes from the meeting of March 12th, 2018.
We have a motion from Commissioner Terry. Do I hear a second? Commissioner Sears with the second.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 2 is the proclamation for Little Miss Kentucky of the United States, the one, the only, Aleah Stigall.
I'm going to read this, and you can present it.
Ms. Terry has the proclamation.
This is the proclamation for Little Miss Kentucky United States 2018. Whereas Aleah Stigall is a student at Woodlawn Elementary and recently competed in the Little Miss Kentucky United States pageant in February 2018. And whereas Aleah Stigall won the title of Little Miss Kentucky United States 2018 on February 25th in Bowling Green, Kentucky, representing Danville, Bull County. And whereas Ms. Stigall will represent the state of Kentucky and the city of Danville at the Little Miss United States pageant in Orlando in June of 2018. And will be competing in the categories of private interview, sportswear, evening gown, and on-stage questions. And whereas Aleah will represent the city of Danville and Boyle County throughout the state at different events during the 2018-19, and is a role model for the youth of Danville, Boyle County, and is to be commended for her accomplishments. Now therefore, Mayor G. Michael Parris and the City Commissioners of the City of Danville on this 26th day of March 2018 do hereby congratulate Aleah Stigall on becoming Little Miss Kentucky United States 2018 and wish her the best at the national competition in June. We encourage the citizens of Danville to congratulate her on her success and representation of Danville, Kentucky.
Well done, young lady. Would you like to say anything?
I'm very honored to represent Kentucky in Danville. I am very excited to go to the national pageant
Excellent. And where will that be again?
in Orlando.
Orlando.
Aren't you taking us to chaperones, though?
Thank you. Come back and visit with us again, would you? You're going to win. I can tell.
Absolutely.
What do we got? Oh, this is her. You want to hold that up? Can you get a good picture of her?
There you go.
What kind
There you
of
go.
questions do they ask you, Lee? Is it on-stage questions?
It can really be anything. It just depends on what they want to ask.
Is it like your opinion on things, that kind of stuff, or?
Like your favorite stuff or like that.
Very good.
Let's have Mom stand up in the background so we can see her. All right. There we go. Young lady, not bad.
Congratulations.
You do great.
Absolutely.
Congratulations.
Maria, anything you want to add?
Aleah is a wonderful young lady. I've known her for several years, and she's already accomplished so much. And so I think Danville has a history of pageant girls doing well nationally with Olivia and Aleah. So I couldn't be more proud of her. She's beautiful inside and she is outside.
So just for the record, Maria Montgomery is here, and I think, do you coach Aleah?
If you want to call it that,
Yeah.
we hang out.
Coach Aleah. So, and this is the same circuit that you started on?
No, so I did, the one that you're maybe thinking of is Miss USA. So that was,
Okay.
for Miss USA, they don't have divisions as young, unfortunately. But it's very similar, just this one goes younger. And but they also have up to Mrs. division as well. So they carry all ages, and it's still a national pageant. Thank you.
Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
For having me.
Nice. Feel free to hang around or whatever. Do I hear a motion that we accept that proclamation?
I move that we gladly accept the proclamation as presented for Little Miss Kentucky.
Thank you, Commissioner Atkins. How about a second?
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Cardle, questions, discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Next, we have a proclamation for the Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month. And I'm going to ask Commissioner Atkins to take that one.
2018 Child Abuse Awareness Prevention Month. Whereas National Child Abuse Prevention Month will be recognized throughout the United States during the month of April 2018, and whereas preventing child abuse and neglect is a community problem that depends on involvement among people throughout the community, and whereas child maltreatment occurs when people find themselves in stressful situations without community resources and don't know how to cope. And whereas during periods of economic challenges, families feel more vulnerable and as a result, child abuse and neglect increases drastically. And whereas child abuse and neglect can be reduced by making sure each family has the support they need to raise their children in a healthy environment, and whereas child abuse is considered to be one of our nation's most serious public health problems, with scientific studies documenting the link between the abuse and neglect of children and a wide range of medical, emotional, psychological, and behavioral disorders. And whereas all citizens should become involved in supporting families and raising their children in a safe and nurturing environment, and whereas effective child abuse prevention programs succeed because of partnerships created among state and local government agencies, schools, faith communities, civic organizations, law enforcement agencies, and the business community. Therefore, be it resolved that Mayor G. Michael Paris and the Board of Commissioners of the City of Danville, on this 26th day of March 2018, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2018 as Child Abuse Awareness Prevention Month. Wow.
That's a lot of words.
Excellent. I don't believe there's anyone here to accept this, but it's still an important proclamation.
Yes.
And I'll entertain a motion to accept it.
I move to accept the 2018 Child Abuse Awareness Prevention Month
Thank you, Mr.
Second.
Atkins.
proclamation.
How about a
Second.
second by Commissioner Terry? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Thank you, motion carries. Item 4 is a proclamation in recognition of our very own KSD Culinary team. And Commissioner Sears
I have it, yeah.
has that duty.
Yeah, I'm going to take over. I'm going to save the mayor's voice tonight and kind of pass this stuff around. So, proclamation, KSD Culinary Team. Whereas Kentucky School for the Deaf in Danville, Kentucky, has a culinary team made up of 6 students who competed for the first time in the annual Deaf Culinary Bowl that was held at the Culinary Institute of San Francisco in March of 2018. And whereas KSD culinary team members Lane Atkins, Ariel Collins, Salami Gomez, Sarah Joyner, Benny Shirley, Shirteen Warmack, along with Coach Mandy Byrne, competed as the KSD Deaf Chefs against 7 other teams from California, Fremont, American School for the Deaf, Riverside, Florida School for the Deaf, Missouri School for the Deaf, Rocky Mountain School for the Deaf, Texas School for the Deaf, and others. And whereas KSD Deaf Chefs were scored on their selection, presentation, flavor of their dishes, and on their management skills, safety, sanitation skills, and culinary preparation techniques. And whereas KSD Deaf Chefs brought home 2nd place in the competition with their award-winning meal representing Danville, Boyle County, and the community, and are role models for the youth of Danville, Boyle County, they are to be commended on their accomplishments. Now therefore, Mayor G. Michael Paris and the City Commissioners of the City of Danville, on this 26th day of March 2018, do hereby congratulate KSD Deaf Chefs culinary team and encourage the citizens of Danville to congratulate them on their success and representation of Danville, Kentucky.
Come up.
Yay. We
You
want
take it to him?
Yes, would you please? No, you do that. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. Have him come up here, Jennifer. Have him come up here.
Jen-
I'm sorry. Have him come up here, please.
Jennifer, would you ask them what they cooked for their, in their competition?
We're the leftovers.
We cooked pasta with chicken. Yeah, mine was a cannoli with a type of dessert, a cannoli.
Sounds good.
And we had different appetizers.
So what are they going to do with this talent?
Yeah, we want to cook.
Obviously.
Amanda's asking, what are you going to do next year? And they're going to stay on the team. Ariel's saying it's my passion, you know, to do this as a business. That's what I want to do.
Excellent.
Wow, that's great.
No, no, we're not going to win second. We're going for first.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. Well, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
They did bring you something. They did bring you something tonight. Do you want to pass out?
Sure, to everyone up here? Sure.
Oh, wow, what a whole audience.
Looks like I'll start my diet tomorrow. That's pretty cool.
There you go, yeah.
You can't see this. I don't know if you can see this, but this is a depiction, and it says on the top, City Hall. Isn't that cool?
That's great.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome. Thank you.
A great treat. Continuing on with the fun, I'll accept a motion that we approve the proclamation.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Sears. Is there a second? Commissioner Cottle, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Item 5 is proclamation for Autism Awareness Month. I think it's most appropriate that Commissioner Cottle handle that duty.
I would be happy to, near and dear to my heart. Proclamation National Autism Awareness Month, April 2018. Whereas autism, the fastest growing developmental disability in the United States affecting more than 3 million people, is an urgent public health crisis that demands a national response. And whereas in recognition of the growing needs of the worldwide autistic community and to raise awareness about autism spectrum disorders and the need to provide services to individuals and families who are affected, the month of April has been designated as National Autism Awareness Month. And whereas National Autism Awareness Month represents an excellent opportunity to promote autism awareness, autism acceptance, and to draw attention to the tens of thousands facing an autism diagnosis each year. And whereas the City of Danville is honored to recognize the national observance of Autism Awareness Month and World Autism Awareness Day, which is April 2nd, 2018, and the hope that it will lead to a better understanding of the disorder. Now, therefore, Mayor G. Michael Parris and the City Commissioners of the City of Danville, on this 26th day of March 2018, do hereby proclaim April 2018 as Autism Awareness Month and April 2nd as Autism Awareness Day in World Autism Awareness Day in Danville, Kentucky, to raise public awareness of autism and the myriad of issues surrounding autism, and do encourage the citizens of Danville to participate in events promoting autism awareness in our community throughout the month.
Do I hear a motion to accept the proclamation as presented?
I move to accept the proclamation as presented.
Thank you, Commissioner Atkins. How about a second?
Second.
Commissioner Terry, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Item 6 is a banner request from the Great American Brass Band Festival. Ms. Cooper?
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Nice to see you again. Thank you for allowing me to come and make this request. I am, of course, Robin Cooper. I saw you all a few days ago. I'm the Executive Director of the Great American Brass Band Festival, and I am coming this evening to request permission to place the banner on the railing in front of City Hall 2 weeks prior to the festival.
I'll move to accept the banner request.
Second.
Motion is made by Commissioner Sarah, seconded by Commissioner Cardle. I assume, we're in discussion, I assume, Mr. City Engineer, that meets all specifications? Earl?
So,
I think that's wrong.
it does.
It's the same one as last year.
It meets all specifications. Excellent. You can go back to reading now.
I think Earl's on the NyQuil pretty heavy right now.
Yeah,
Usually city manager, yeah.
city manager.
Well, Mr. City Manager, does that meet your?
It does.
It does. Thank you. Sorry, Earl.
Who's on the night?
I'll never talk to you again.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you, Ron.
All in favor, I need a motion and a second for the request.
We've
did.
had,
We did?
We just need to vote.
Well, then we need a vote.
let's do that.
Let's do that. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
You can
Motion
go back to
carries.
reading now, Mayor.
Thank you. That's right. Hey, Earl, what are you reading? I'll tell you what I'm reading. You tell me what you're reading. Item 7. Item 7 is resolution number 2018-03-26-01. This is the health insurance for fiscal year 2018 and 2019. Mr. Scott, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Tonight we have for consideration a innovative and cost-saving measure that is designed to allow the city to continue its present health insurance coverage for city employees and their dependents without increasing cost, which is a pretty big trick in these days where health insurance rapidly goes up and insurance companies close, as our present carrier is doing. And they notified, Baptist Health notified all of their insureds about a year ago that they would be closing their doors either at the renewal dates of December 31, 2017 or at the later date of June 30th, 2018. The proposal we have before you tonight, we have had the assistance in developing with one of the preeminent brokers in the state who has experience in Kentucky, Tennessee, and other states in developing self-insured programs for local governments in a way to allow them to have the opportunity for cost savings, the continuation of medical benefits, and claims services that are of great caliber and that are appreciated by those many local governments that currently are self-funded. In Kentucky, traditionally, maybe we, in years past, were insured fully for that exposure. The days of Blue Cross and Blue Shield and other Baptist Health carriers were here, and we always, as you will recall, struggled year to year with the fluctuations in prices of those coverages. This offers the opportunity and the possibility of saving hundreds of thousands of dollars in terms of being more directly accountable, I guess is the word I would say, for our own health management issues. We have tonight, which we may want to recognize, Mr. Mayor and Commissioner, at a future point in time, two representatives from Cheryl Morgan who may wish to say a brief point on this. But I would say, for your benefit and recollection, that the city staff has for 2 years or longer managed without a broker our health insurance renewals. We have saved without a broker over $100,000 in that period of time. Our money is very limited. Our opportunities for increasing that is also very limited. So the recommendation made to you tonight is in lieu of any recommendation to raise taxes or generate additional revenues. It's to be prudent with what money we're currently spending and have a program that continues without change the present coverage and offers the potential for saving a significant amount of money in subsequent years. So that's an overview. If you have specific questions or if you would like for me to get into the resolution in some depth, I'll be happy to do that. It talks about the fact that we interviewed several brokers before selecting one based upon the judgment of the city manager and staff in terms of those that were most experienced in self-funding. Just like individuals, all brokers are not equally adept at all things. Some have greater experience and track record than some than others. And we made the decision that to go with those that we felt could bring the greatest potential benefit to the city. And that's what's before you tonight. We reviewed the financial ratings of the reinsurance companies, all A-rated companies. We reviewed the audit of the third-party claims service that would handle the accounts, an excellent audit report of their systems and management controls. We talked with other insureds, presently insured under these arrangements, such as Bardstown, who said, and Donna could add to this, that they would never really consider going back to a fully insured basis after being self-insured under this approach since 1999 and having premiums today that were no greater than they had in 1999, which is an unusual track record and outcome. Any private business that's been struggling with obtaining health insurance over the past decade knows it's difficult to control costs, and this is our effort to do so at a reasonable cost. It's a program recommended to you for adoption tonight. There are a number of documents that our city attorney has reviewed, had some changes to suggest to the reinsurers and so forth with regard to the location of any adjudication of any issue. Those requests were agreed to, where they would be Kentucky-based rather than Connecticut or New Jersey, for example. And we've invested a considerable period of time to bring this recommendation to you tonight.
Well, I'll make a motion so we can get to discussion. I move for approval of Resolution 2018-03-2601.
We have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a second. We are in discussion, if there is any.
Well, I don't know that I have any, but if we have guests here, if they've traveled here, would you like to hear from them that are representing the company? Did you say that?
Our brokerage firm, Cheryl Morgan from North Kentucky, Covington, yes.
Feel free.
They might be able to better answer the question I have.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and
Good
Commissioners. My name is Lisa Stam. I am Vice President of Consulting Services and Staff Attorney for the Cheryl Morgan Agency. And with me this evening is Robin Curry, and he is also an agent with Cheryl Morgan. We're happy to answer any questions that you have about the proposed self-funded arrangement. I will just say that Cheryl Morgan does represent a number of Kentucky governments on a self-funded basis. In addition to the city of Bardstown, we also represent the cities of Covington, Florence, Bowling Green, Shelbyville, Newport, Winchester, a number of others. So I think in general, those governments have found that self-funding their employee benefits is a fiscally sound way of controlling the cost of their benefits over time. We welcome any questions that you have.
Mike, do you have a question? No. You read about it, and it saves us a ton of money, and nothing changes for our employees. And so I have to ask, what's the downside? I mean, there's got to be some potential pitfalls, or, I mean, it sounds like the greatest thing since extra crunchy peanut butter, so there's got to be something in there.
Honestly, I'm going to struggle to come up with a downside to being self-funded. There is maybe a little more work on the part of your staff, but we've discussed those tasks with them, and I feel like they're comfortable with them. I mean, it's not a great deal more effort. It can be as much as they want it to be. They can become more involved or just have minimal involvement. But most of our clients find that they like to be involved because they like to help structure the benefits in such a way that it meets the needs of their workforce. And they like to get creative and trying to control the costs of their plan.
What about the risk to the city?
Well, if you know how to structure your reinsurance, which is something that I think Cheryl Morgan really brings to the table, there really is no financial exposure that is beyond the maximum cost that you see in the description that Mr. Scott has provided. And the stop-loss proposal that we have is an extremely good one in that not only does it protect you on a maximum basis this year, but it also protects you at your next renewal by guaranteeing that you cannot have additional liability on any claimant, and you also know what your maximum increase could be on your premium. So we have a couple of extra bells and whistles on your policy that we're very pleased about.
Thank you.
What do you do on the wellness side, if anything?
Well, the third-party administrator that you would be hiring is a company called MedBan, and they have a very creative wellness program that will be available to you. And that wellness program is one that encourages employees and their spouses to receive preventive care from their own physician versus bringing in, a company to do a biometric screening or something to that effect. We've found that the best way to use your wellness dollars is really to encourage that relationship with the individual's own doctor, because one of the things that you don't get when you have a biometric screening on site is colonoscopies and pap smears and mammograms and things like that. All those good things flow from that relationship that the person has with their physician. So we feel like the best possible use of taxpayer dollars for wellness programs for our municipal clients and all of our clients, in fact, is to really encourage that physician relationship. So we call it physician-directed wellness, and it is one of the very best things that you can do to invest in the future of your health plan. Because if you encourage people to go get those preventive screenings, then you're going to catch cancers at stage 1 and stage 2 rather than stage 3 or 4, where the cost is going to be so much greater and the outcome is going to be so much worse for the individual.
So as it is currently, if we have a health insurance question or issue, we go to our city clerk who handles that. How will this change, if it changes at all?
Well, your city clerk will have the ability to contact not only Cheryl Morgan, her representatives there, but also at MedBan, the third-party administrator, there will be a team devoted to servicing the staff. And then when your employees have customer service issues, MedBan has customer service representatives, of course, and Cheryl Morgan also has a customer service representative that does nothing but field employee questions all day. And he and his team is going to be available to your employees. So I think you're going to find that you have an enhanced level of both group service and customer service beyond what you've had on a fully insured basis in the past.
How does the enrollment process work?
Well, we will be available, as will MedBan, to come down and do enrollment meetings. And we'll do, as much education as you will allow us to do for your employees. And the enrollment process will essentially work the same as it has in the past beyond that.
Mr. Scott, have you talked to any about the educational component that they're offering?
Well, it is an additional layer that can be provided in terms of just wellness educational facilities, or understanding, as I think you're speaking of, right, on any particular topic.
Correct. Yes.
So in communities where you offer that, what kind of response do you get to that? Minimal, average?
Are you talking about the wellness component?
Right.
Well, that depends on how much.
Well, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I mean, the education component.
Oh, the educational
Sorry.
component. Oh, a very good response, actually. The more education you can do for your employees, the better, because we want them to understand that this is the city's health plan, and that if they're good stewards of their health plan, then that's going to directly benefit them in the future by keeping costs under control and keeping their benefits as stable as possible.
I would think that would be a nice feature. Further questions?
We got some people sitting out there who are wondering what we're talking about. We're talking about self-insuring healthcare benefits. So would you explain and define self-insuring?
Absolutely. That's a great question. What a self-funded health plan is essentially the employer acting as their own insurance company up to certain financial limits. And so right now you're with Baptist Health Plans, and they are a fully insured carrier. So they actually are the claims payer. if this proposal is adopted this evening, MedBen will be the face of the insurance for the employees, and they will perform all the functions that Baptist performs today. They'll have customer service representatives, they'll have ID cards that they issue to your employees, they'll receive the claims from the doctors and the hospitals and the pharmacies and issue payment to the providers. Really, the only difference is the actual financial responsibility for the plan is on the city and its reinsurance carrier. MedBen is going to be purely an administrator. So that essentially is what self-funding is. And the reasons that employers self-fund their health plans are twofold, really. The first one is to eliminate that profit margin that you've always paid to the insurance companies. So today, a portion of every premium dollar that goes to Baptist is designed by the underwriters to be retained by them in the form of profit. And that's fine. They're for-profit companies. They're in business to make money. Everybody knows that. But when you're self-funded, you're eliminating that profit margin. And that's about a 25% load onto your premium currently. So that's the first reason. But a second reason, and potentially a more important reason, is the ability to customize and control your health plan costs. So you don't have to just select from the a la carte options that the fully insured carriers offer you every year. You can design the plan that you want for your employees. If you want to change a copay or a deductible, or if you want to cover some over-the-counter medications at no cost to your employees because it makes financial sense to do that, then you can do those things, rather than just accepting whatever it is Anthem or Humana or United Healthcare or Baptist wants to offer you. Did that answer your question, Commissioner?
Yes, ma'am. Very good. And the second one is that you've mentioned about stop-loss coverage, and I don't think people understand what you want to define that one for us, too.
Sure. So stop-loss or reinsurance is the financial protection for the city. If you were purely self-funded without reinsurance, then if you had $1 million claimant, let's say, then that entire $1 million claim would come out of the city's coffers. But when you have reinsurance, and I'll be specific about the reinsurance that you would be purchasing, you have two different types. The first one is what we call specific stop loss, and that guarantees that no one person on the plan can cost the city more than $50,000 in any given plan year. Okay? So in theory, the city's liability would be $50,000 multiplied by all of the individuals on the plan. And that would be a really big number, and a number that we would not feel comfortable with. So you purchase a second kind of reinsurance, and that's called aggregate reinsurance. And that is protection for all those amounts under that $50,000 specific deductible. And what the underwriters do to ascertain what that maximum claims number will be for your group as a whole is they look at what they expect your claims to be, and then they add a quarter of 25% onto that. So that's how they establish your maximum. So your maximum liability for the year is that maximum claims amount plus your fixed cost. So what you pay to MedBen to administer your plan, and what you pay the stop-loss carrier for that insurance, what you pay to Cheryl Morgan. So all of those costs together are that maximum funding number that is in the proposal. And is essentially what you're paying now to Baptist.
That was a great answer as well. And then my last question, I think we're going to be under the umbrella of Cigna Health and Life Insurance Company. So would you give the audience a little background, a little history about Cigna Life?
Yes, another great question. So when you've been with Baptist or Anthem or Humana in the past, you've used their provider networks. And what having a provider network gets you is discounts off of the claims. So all of the providers that participate in the provider network have agreed that they will take a percentage off of every claim that your members incur at their facilities. And so when you are self-funded with a TPA like MedBen, you need to have a provider network. And so Cigna, which is actually a fully insured company that does business in the state of Kentucky, will also lease their provider network. So the city will simply rent that network so that when your members need to have services provided, they can go and have that done at a discount. Does that make sense?
Will either one of you be the face of our health insurance plan going forward?
We both will be. We will be here at least quarterly or as often as you would like for us to be here.
Be careful what you ask for.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, playing off of Commissioner Caudell's question, cards will be provided, you mentioned that. And so these cards have Cigna's name on them, or whose name?
They will have the city of Danville's
Okay.
logo. They will have MedBen's name, and they will also have Cigna.
Okay. And so, in your experience, have people had trouble? They're on vacation somewhere, and they provide this card for insurance? They've gone to the hospital for any reason?
No, actually, Cigna is a national network, and your members should not have any trouble at all finding in-network providers. But if they would be traveling and they did not have the opportunity to find an in-network provider, there will be a provision in your plan that allows those claims to be paid at the in-network benefit level, because you don't want to penalize individuals in those situations. So it's the same with emergency services. I mean, anytime somebody can't realistically search for a provider who's in the network, there will be exceptions in your plan that will help deal with those situations. But really, Cigna is a vast network throughout the country, and there really shouldn't be many holes, if any.
Mm-hmm.
And our local providers will accept it as well?
Yes, correct. And if there, I'm sorry, Commissioner, if there would be a provider who is not participating in the Cigna network, then we can go about getting them credentialed and getting them added to the network. We just need to know who those providers are. I'm not expecting that there are going to be many, but if there are a couple, one or two here or there, then we'd be happy to, facilitate that.
Jessamine County actually uses this network over in Nicholasville, as well as Shelbyville is using it, Winchester. And Danville doesn't have a network, right? I'm sorry, not Danville, but Bardstown.
Right.
So
Okay.
we have several in central Kentucky.
So once again, playing off another commissioner's comments, Commissioner Terry in this case, it sounds like you've checked off with our local hospital. You certainly probably haven't checked off with every provider, but this hospital would.
Yes, and
Yep.
we are in the process of checking the providers who your employees have used recently. It's taking a long time because it's a manual process, and we're having to look them up one by one. But we're working on that for the city, for the city clerk. Yeah.
Any further questions?
Mr. Chair.
You asked all my
Oh,
questions.
I'm sorry. That's why you punched me, right? Okay. Well, a lot of times the questions are good they're just good information, because the audience is present, and we've had this a few days to review it. And then those good citizens who look at this on the recording, it's important for them to get the good kind of information that's necessary. And then I guess my last comment is to my city attorney. You've went through these things with your little fine comb.
We
got them ready
did.
for us.
I, in conjunction with city manager and staff, reviewed every document that's before you and attempted in the resolution to simply try to put the pieces of the puzzle together, because there's different players, as you could see, in how they fit together in the self-insured program, which I hope we were successful in being clear in the resolution of how the city, and I think the explanation tonight was probably more succinct than my resolution, but that's because it's a learning process for us at the city as well. But there were no issues with any of the documents that I foresaw or that jumped out at the city manager, and the very small questions we did have just about arbitration of claims and things of that nature were readily resolved with a single email, which was nice.
Thank you, sir.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, Chair will call the question.
And Mayor, if I may, just for clarification,
Yes.
You're approving tonight by the resolution a number of documents. And those are all outlined in the therefore paragraph, but I think it's important to note, so you're approving a consulting agreement with Sherrill Morgan, a business associate agreement with Sherrill Morgan, a network service agreement with Cigna, and a benefit manage agreement with MedBen, and also the excess loss insurance policy with United States Fire Insurance Company.
Correct.
So those are the conglomerate of documents that you're approving, just for the sake of clarity.
I'm proud of you, Stephen. Usually you would have done those one at a time and added to our billable hours. I think it's very nice of you.
I resent that comment.
He's been pre-forgiven, Stephen.
You'd like- After that, Stephen, you want a cookie?
I don't want to, well, I'm not on the city's insurance, so I can have as many as I want, right?
That's a good one. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, Chair will call a question. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you. We look forward to seeing both of you.
Thank you.
We understand you have about an hour and a half drive ahead of you, so feel free to excuse yourself and safe travels.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Don't they get to stay for the
Yes,
executive
absolutely.
Yeah.
Man.
All right, item 8, City Manager Report. Mr. Scott?
Yes, sir. Bear with me tonight. I have a few brief administrative matters to discuss and then a somewhat longer topic to discuss, that being our efforts to create a tax incentive financing district. And I think, as Mr. Atkins frequently says, for the benefit of our audience and home members to understand really what we're attempting to do, I want to again go into a little bit of detail regarding that effort. First of all, in terms of administrative matters, I want to remind the public and the commission that this Thursday, March 29th, the City Commission will hold a special call meeting at 5:30 here at City Hall to hear public comments regarding suggestions or needs of the city residents that are requested to be addressed in next year's budget. We welcome those comments and encourage those. In addition, I will present to the City Commission and to the public the findings of our recent National Citizen Survey, which is the second time that we have had that survey conducted in Danville. That survey talks about the public's evaluation of the city services and their rankings or evaluations of city livability issues. It's a survey that has been taken in communities hundreds of times across the nation, and it gives us a point of comparison with regard to the eternal question of how are we doing in the provision of these services to meet the needs of our citizens. I want to mention a topic that is sounding more and more like a refrain of an earlier comment, and it probably is. And that is that the funding for the city next fiscal year is under some stress due to the pending imposition of what we think are arbitrary and excessive contribution rates on our pension that was imposed by the Kentucky Retirement System Board of Directors in 2017. I mention this because we've had local discussion of the fact that it's going to cost the city annually $700,000 more in round terms, and it'll be more than that in subsequent years, unless the General Assembly sees fit to enact legislation that would modify those administrative decisions of the Kentucky Retirement System Board, which as it's presently constituted would increase our rates by almost 50% from what we're currently paying. That means that next year, beginning July 1, not only will we pay $700,000 more, but our total payment for pension contributions to the Kentucky Retirement System Board will be in the neighborhood of $2.1 million. That's a reality unless the General Assembly acts. We heard a lot of requests from community agencies, and they were seeking funding, and I would be the first to say among you that they do many great things. The opportunity for the city to continue to assist them in doing those great things is going to dramatically decrease unless we get some relief in the form of Senate Bill 66 being passed or some equivalent legislation. And we're in the waning days of that General Assembly, and I guess my own outlook is that I'm less positive that that's going to occur than maybe I was earlier in the session. So I say that just for our own collective understanding and just understanding. I'll mention another report among many that we're working to complete, and that is our wayfinding report. I didn't really get an exact completion date of that, but I anticipate it to be completed during the month of April, and we'll look forward to having that report before the City Commission when it is complete. Now, again, if you will bear with me, and our agenda is relatively light tonight, and it's only 6:20, so I want to just, again, go over a little bit of economic development efforts by tax increment financing. And Danville is no different than any other community in the country, where each year cities and counties basically invest in economic development strategies to promote growth in their local communities. We've struggled with this issue for quite a number of years. Locally, we do so through incentives provided by the Danville and Boyle County governments to our joint efforts in conjunction with Economic Development Partnership and with the Heart of Danville. These strategies focus, as we all know, on job creation, increased economic activities, and ultimately creation of a broader economic base that can support needed governmental services being provided to benefit the entire community. We now have, after a year and a half of effort, a strategic economic development plan to further guide our local efforts. In part, that adopted 2017 Strategic Economic Development Plan recommended the EDP or its partner organizations pursue as part of a larger economic development strategy the development of a downtown hotel, as well as other facilities mentioned in that report, in a manner that balances the economic and fiscal needs of the community with minimizing impact to residential area and natural assets. In other words, do it consistent with smart growth principles. An independent study conducted by the Convention and Visitors Bureau, as we recall, concluded that it was feasible to attract and financially support a boutique hotel in downtown Danville, and also in a manner that wouldn't adversely affect our existing other hotels out on the bypass. Our adopted strategic economic plan also noted that sharing the financial benefits of business expansion and recruitment with the prospect has become a reality for communities. These sharing arrangements come in the form of tax abatements or reimbursements, among other forms of assistance. Governments in 49 states are authorized to employ tax increment financing to promote economic development and redevelopment. By capturing future incremental revenue in an area targeted for development and redevelopment, the sponsoring government is able to undertake economic development activities or provide subsidies that otherwise it probably couldn't do or that might not be possible. The Governmental Finance Officers Association, GFOA, 2005 publication, which is entitled An Elected Official's Guide to Tax Increment Financing, cites tax increment financing as the preeminent tool used by local governments throughout the United States for achieving local economic development goals. Many of the comments I'm giving tonight really come from that publication. So, the City of Danville, as we all know, recently contracted with a law firm which specializes throughout the state of Kentucky in tax increment financing. We did so in an effort to aid our economic development efforts. We just recently had a member of that firm, Mr. James Parson, make a presentation to the City Commission and the public regarding the general topic and the fundamentals of creating tax increment financing district, one or more, as many other Kentucky cities have done, and the benefits that may be possible by doing so. Mr. Parsons pointed out, and I would remind us all, that local efforts at creating a TIF district are not always successful. Based upon Mr. Parsons' presentation, it seems they are more often successful when the development is driven by a private sector developer than when driven by the public sector or their concepts of what might be economically viable. But the financing technique has been successful in promoting economic development or redevelopment projects, which increases local revenues that strengthen our local tax base. So the use of TIFs as a financing tool has three significant benefits, and I'll leave you with this. First benefit is that they're self-financing. Tax increment financing offers a way to dedicate a specific revenue source to pay for economic development subsidies. The incremental revenue expected to occur after business move into a TIF district or from those businesses already there that expand their operations provide the resources necessary to carry out TIF projects, thus alleviating the need to establish a separate tax levy or increase tax rates upon local residents outside of the TIF district. I mean, they're their own best supporters in a way. The second main thing is that it gives local control. TIF increment financing project initiation and management is carried out at the local level, really by the city government, presumably in this case. They're not dependent on federal or state financing, and in fact, in some cases, may qualify for reimbursement of state revenue, such as property or state sales tax. And the third thing to remember about the potential benefits of TIF district is that they are flexible. They provide flexibility in project activities. Simply because they're not subject to so many state or federal laws, TIF districts can be used for a broad array of activities, such as land assembly, demolition, environmental remediation, or other in-kind subsidies. Tax increment financing can also be used to assist a developer directly through discounted land sales or donations, for example. Moreover, TIF subsidies can be layered upon non-TIF subsidies offered by city or state government, again, such as the sales tax. I say all of this really just to point out that our efforts here are not separate from our EDP partnership efforts, but in conjunction with those. And we're trying to use the tools only that the city has available, or the county also has those authorities, to consider areas of redevelopment that might give us a local economic boost in terms of economic activity and future stability of our revenue and broadening of our revenue base that really is not a tax load on anyone else. It's basically an effort to define an area and to provide those authorized incentives that 49 states allow local governments to do in a manner that will promote economic development. This is going to be a topic, I think, that's going to be with us over the next several months, and I just want to, from time to time, again, go back as to why it's important that we fully consider this possibility.
Thank you, sir. Comments? Put me in the column that I'm glad we're doing this. It would have been nice if we had been doing this for a number of years, as other communities have been doing this for a couple of decades. I think it's nice that a city our size is being innovative to do this. Nothing may come of it, but at least we're viewing all avenues, and I appreciate you for bringing this, researching all this, and bringing it to our attention, and we'll see where it goes from here. We are in that section called Hear the Public. As I promised, this is an opportunity for the public to have their say on any topic, to the commission or the staff, on any subject. Mr. K. Wood.
Thank you, sir.
You got 30 seconds.
I'm glad that you all have been talking about claims and insurance because that's the subject of my topic tonight. and I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here. So, having said that, I'm here as a private citizen. I understand the duties as elected officials that you all are and the responsibilities, and I appreciate and value those that you all are, kind of the rules and guidelines that you all are under. In essence of time, I'm going to kind of give you a quick run-through of information that I've passed out, and this was all information that was pulled together by the Open Records Act. It's not prepared by me. My residence, Martha and our residence, is at 423 Maple Avenue. On the morning of December the 5th last year, we got up early to leave town for a quick trip to celebrate our 50 years of marital bliss. I think it was marital bliss most of the time.
Ms. Kaywood,
Ms. Kaywood,
any comment, man?
Don't give her equal time, please. Fortunately, I happened to go to our basement, but unfortunately, I was walking in water. Being in an older residence, we are not unfamiliar to this type of situation. However, it is rare. I think anyone's first reaction is to assume that the issue is on their property. We later found out that that is the wrong assumption. Martha quickly called for a plumber and will take anyone that is available, as we have a long drive ahead of us that day. Finally, we get one there, and they run a snake all the way to the street to dislodge anything within the line. After about 3 hours, nothing is there and the water remains. We are all frustrated and trying to figure out what is the situation. Martha then calls the city to see if it may be on their end. A very pleasant young man by the name of Scott Dow quickly comes out and meets us at the street and informs us that it is on their end and he has reviewed 3 manholes. His report is on page 6 of the report that I gave you. And what you're going to quickly see is that he says that, yes, it is on your end and that he will fix it quickly, which he did, and I find that report to be very accurate. So you can find that on page 6. He said he would repair the problem, which he did, and guess what? The water in the basement went down. My point is, water went down when the city repair was completed, not when we tried with our plumbers. However, we incurred the expense of our plumber being there. Upon return on December the 11th, I met with Donna to file the claim for the plumbing bill only. That's on page 3 of your packet. There is no request for cleanup and a few items which were damaged. We had hoped for consideration for our out-of-pocket expense created by the city and not us. And for the public, that expense was about $370. Finally, on February 23, I received a letter from your insurance company, Collins and Company, denying the claim. I refer you to page 1, paragraph 2. And what jumped out at me was that it was denied because of no prior knowledge on behalf of the city. Well, obviously, the city had no prior knowledge or it would have been fixed. To me, insurance is for situations that are accidental in nature. As we all know, stuff happens. I refer you to page 5 and the 3rd point, which says, we do not have this section of our line on a maintenance program. Logically, if no maintenance program, how would one have any prior knowledge? The only way for the city to know is for a situation to happen. The odds are it could only happen to your customer, your citizen, and your taxpayer. On page 4, I would point out that the last flushing was on January the 6th, 2017. almost 11 months had passed. And the last rotting was on December 30th of 2015. As I later found out through discussions with Mr. Scott, and if I understood him correctly, if there is a second incident at our residence, I will have city protection because the city is now aware. In other words, the first incident is on me and the second incident is on you. I hope we don't go down that road. Also, there is a $2,500 deductible on the city policy as pointed out on page 2 in the middle paragraph. So why did we even go down this insurance trail to begin with? And once again, insurance is for the unexpected events. Now I'm going to put on my magisterial hat for a moment.
Mr.
Because
Kaywood, can I interrupt you for just a moment?
So
We do have a 3-minute time limit, so
I'll hurry it up.
thank you.
Now I wish to put on my magisterial hat as an elected representative of the 6th District, which is mostly in the city limits. I must say that I find this situation unacceptable for my constituents and ask for your relief. Many of them do not know that they are liable for expenses in a similar situation. When they pay their water bill, they would like to think they are protected. As I have said earlier, stuff happens. Since this has happened, I have become aware of other citizens with similar experiences. A neighbor reported a similar situation at a cost of over $900. He reports that he could not even get a response for the city. And may I point out that I've heard of when the when tires of drivers on Main Street in the downtown area became slashed because of the new curbs. And those folks, a lot of them were reimbursed. In closing, I must add that I found the city employees who were involved in this discussion to be very willing to listen and respond to their side. All conversations were respectful all the way around. But I do suggest a solution to this issue which is fair to all of our citizens. We not only ask for reimbursement, out-of-pocket expenses only, but protection for the constituents of the 6th District. At 3:13 this afternoon, I received a phone call from the city. And they said that the insurance company was going to review the claim. As I thought about it, I don't know why they're going to review the claim that they've already denied when their deductible is $2,500, so they're not going to pay it anyway. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It doesn't address the major issue that I think the city needs to have a discussion. I'm sorry I went over my 3 minutes, but thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Graham.
Good evening, Randy Kip Graham, and I'm here to address Parks and Rec and $50,000 millennial consultant study, which is coming to completion. Now, observing comments and learning of the makeup of the steering committee to address the study causes concern and prompts questions regarding intent and possible hidden agenda. Now, in the past year, I've heard a city commissioner say the commission has never really gotten behind the Economic Development Partnership in order to justify investing more dollars. And after a $17,000 loss regarding the skating rink, the Heart of Danville was encouraged to risk our money again. Now, this support is in spite of the fact that the head of one of these two before-mentioned organizations, the EDP, showed a lack of candor to the community regarding intentions on numerous occasions, while the other, the Heart of Danville, tried to resurrect Main Street lane reduction, an area outside his responsibility, in my opinion, both of which were actions that many downtown business owners and taxpayers don't support. However, the same spirit doesn't seem to embrace the Parks and Recreation Department, and this is concerning because we want fairness, don't we? Prior to the current Parks and Recreation Director arriving, it was a financial mess, but we're in the black from an individual eminently qualified as a consultant, if not running our Parks and Recreation. but commissioners have complained publicly about the Recreation Department's equipment and look, and in an ad hoc recreation meeting, our city manager attempted to go into executive committee. Attempted termination? While questioning the ethics of video camera purchases, which I do not see as a conflict of financial common sense, while saying in part Parks and Recs would have to conduct due diligence to meet the requirements of the city's ethic ordinance. Well, what about ethics when the city engineer padded a study with zero statistics from the city of Richmond that made it seem a road that resulted in fewer accidents? And receiving an email from a center professor who indicated he may not be able to make an economic impact study come out as he wished, but would try. Ethics? Seems it's all in who's doing the defining, isn't it? Now, I agree with the commissioner that the public doesn't have all the facts because we depend on trust. So what are the facts? Why is it that the steering committee regarding the consultant study does not have representation of the head of the Parks and Recreation or board chairman? They were on the consultant's list, weren't they? I mean, isn't that a fact? And why does the city subsidize the McDowell Wellness Center over Parks and Recreation regarding employees? And how much of this money could go to Parks and Recreation, such as new carpet machinery? How far would $50,000 have gone towards developing Millennial Park? These are thoughts and concerns not of just 20 to 50 people, but the silent majority we hear outside every day. Now, I hope this $50,000 is not in part a witch hunt involving a stacked deck in order for the city to gain control of Millennium Park while targeting the Parks and Recreation Director, but it certainly looks that way. Thank you.
Anyone else? Going once, Mr. Knight.
Well, a couple things, but one to address Mr. Kaywood's point. There's a large pothole on the road between the hospital and 117 South 3rd, which is the old Methodist Church building, and it's on Walnut Street, so now the city's been notified because I have to drive over it every day when I pull out of the parking lot at my office. The other thing I just wanted to come up and say, put me in the column of being opposed to tax increment financing districts. I think that even though they've been around for a couple of decades, maybe a little bit longer, there's been very little financial, economic impact studies done, academic or otherwise, across the country. So there's very little research about these things, but the limited economic data that we do have indicates that at best, they're a mixed bag, and at worst, they actually lose money and they actually limit, and this is something you all really need to check into, limit the tax dollars that will go to our school system because it freezes tax money in place. So I really hope you take a real hard look at tax increment financing because it can actually be very detrimental to the community, not a positive. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Margaret Calhoun. Mr. Atkins, I have talked to Mr. Coffey about the septic tank down there on J.E. Woods in the 3rd Square. During the summer, it smells and looked like they just patched it up. It's been like that ever since I was a little girl. Looked like they would replace it. Make it look better than what it is. It's a bad smell. And also, you widen the bridge on 2nd Street. Now, I was just told that we're going to have to go another way. I mean, they're going to take the bridge up and put another one. So we're going to have to go to the right where we got to go. Okay, when is that going to be doing? When they be doing that?
We're trying to work on the 2nd Street Bridge this year. We're sending out an RFP to try to solicit proposals to do that work. Depending on how the costs come in, it most likely would be a deck removal, which would mean it would be closed for probably 60 to 90 days.
Ooh, okay.
Right.
Well, at least we have a one-way out.
Yes, ma'am.
And you need to put a stoplight there. Because them people drive 40 miles an hour going up 2nd and down 2nd. A caution light or something.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move right on to commissioners' comments. Feel free to jump in, anyone.
Yeah, we had a good segue for my comments. I thought it was good timing that we had the recognition of the culinary team from KSD here, as the newspaper reported last week, that we're right in the midst of Deaf History Month, which started March 15th and runs through April 15th. So I want to read a couple things here because it kind of segues or kind of relates a little bit, I'll use the right term if I can, with what Commissioner Atkins has been kind of promoting here lately. The Kentucky Commission on the Deaf and Hard of Hearing urges Kentuckians to celebrate National Deaf History Month, March 13th to the 15th, by recognizing deaf champions and increasing awareness of the deaf community's contributions and rich history. Kentucky has deaf champions like Jerry Gordon Brown, an African-American woman with a profound hearing loss who marched in Frankfort with Dr. Martin Luther King while she was a student at Kentucky State College in 1964. So I think that was worth bringing up, especially after today's celebration for our culinary team. And we're all aware that KSD was the first deaf school west of the Alleghenies, but it was not the first deaf school. There was one up in Hartford, Connecticut, but certainly that's the other side of the mountains. And that's all I have to say.
Anyone else? This Saturday is an all-day retreat with the Economic Development Partnership. And that's going to be moderated by Kyle Talente. Further exercise into taking those things on paper and put them into motion. I will also add that this Thursday, I'll have the honor and privilege of attending a ceremony in Louisville. Our water treatment facility has been nominated for an award by an engineering group. So another nice little feather in City of Danville's cap in my remarks.
Well, I have a few. I thought Ms. Calhoun was going to ask us about the dedication of the...
Oh, yes, I know about that. The county told me it's going to be after spring break, second week of April.
Do you have a date established?
No, we'll announce one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
we were trying to get past spring break after talking about it and where it was going to fall and when the sign was going to be ready. So we put it off to the second week, which is the week after spring break, and we'll issue a date certain so that folks are aware.
I was just teasing with her, but I want to remind everybody that April the 4th, 2018 is the 50th commemoration of the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. And our Kentucky Human Rights Commission is going to have in Frankfort at 1:30 p.m. a commemorative march in honor of Dr. King. And then our community celebration is going to be Sunday, April the 15th, 2:00 p.m. We start out at Trinity Episcopal Church, and we go to several different locations in downtown Danville. And then we're going to end our march at St. James AME Church around 4:15. And when that program concludes, we'll follow that up with a fellowship meal so that all those who are in attendance and all those who, I should say, complete the march will be at St. James, and we'll have a community meal. But I want to say an important thing that's going to happen on the 15th as a part of this, and that is that a lot of us are aware of the fact that Dr. King in 1964, March of 1964, led a march on Frankfort. And part of our program Sunday is that there's going to be a presentation by a native Danvillian who participated in the March on Frankfort in 1964. He's someone that you all know very well, but I will not call out any names, but please be in attendance for that. And we're going to have 1964 remembrance from that person, followed by a 1964 remembrance by someone who was at Yale University during the same time period. So two prominent Danvillians are going to reflect on their life during the time of King's March in 1964. And then we're in the process of raising funds to purchase 100 copies of M.L. King's book, Where Do We Go From Here? Community or Chaos. And sometime this fall, we're going to have several book reads and discussions about that book. So as this celebration continues, please, I want to encourage the audience to sign up on April the 15th. We're not passing books out on April the 15th, but we'll give you an opportunity to sign up and let us know you're interested in participating in the book read and the book discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Trying to figure out some way we could name the park that same day. That would be kind of appropriate, but that day's pretty busy, the 15th.
Oh. Yeah.
I don't know how we'd squeeze it in there, but something to think about. When do we meet again, the committee?
The committee meets April the 9th at 4 o'clock, right before our 5:30 city commission meeting.
Moving right along to item 9, you have in front of you the bills as presented. I need a motion and a second for the payment of the bills. Do you hear a motion?
I move we pay the March 26, 2018 bill list, $117,016.59 as presented.
Motion's made by Commissioner Atkins, second by
Second.
Commissioner Sears. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Item 10 is Resolution 2018-03-26-02. This is in regard to some lot buybacks in our cemetery. Ms. Peak?
We would just ask that you approve this resolution that's in front of you to purchase back a grave from the Arnolds in the amount of $750.
I move for approval of Resolution 2018-03-2602.
Thank you, Commissioner Cottle. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Terry. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Item 11 is Resolution 2018-03-26-03. This is in regard to the KU Plant the Planet Tree Grant acceptance. Mr. Coffey.
Resolution is in front of you. Essentially, we've been awarded the KU grant again.
Is that, it's a matching grant?
It is, and it's
Yep.
matched with Dr. Weston's program, and it has been ongoing now. I want to say this is the third year, fourth year.
So, third.
Okay.
Could be more than that. Yeah. Fifth year.
Yeah, I'll move to accept resolution number 2018-03-2603.
Second.
Thanks, Commissioner Sears. Commissioner Cottle, any discussion?
Yeah, I think you answered my question. I was wondering how this coordinated with Dr. Weston's. It is his program then, basically, okay. So he's actually, this resolution states that it's for downtown. He's sort of moving out of that area. Is there restrictions?
There's not, no. Not with the Plant the Planet. Essentially, downtown is the city limits.
Oh,
The way we
okay.
look at it.
Okay, then. Boy, we've got a lot of work for Nick to do with the Heart of Danville now, don't we?
And so there's going to be $8,000 worth of trees purchased and planted? 4 and 4?
Yes.
Is that right? Wow, that'd be a good number again.
It's a lot of trees.
Yeah.
Any further questions or comments?
We don't need some.
Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Item 12 is Municipal Order 03-26-01-2018. This is in regard to the liability insurance requirement. Mr. Dexter?
Thank you, Mayor. It became clear to city staff that there were, I'll say, unclear, unwritten precedents for what type of insurance and limits that would be required for those who may be interested in renting city-owned real property or facilities. And so the purpose of this municipal order is to simply make those limits and types of insurance a requirement prior to staff accepting an application for the rental of that real property, of certain real property or facilities, as may be appropriate. So you'll see that in the event that city-owned facility is rented, there are minimal coverage amounts for commercial general liability insurance of $1 million per occurrence, or $2 million per occurrence, $3 million aggregate in the event of a sports-related or physical activity involved, and liquor liability insurance, if applicable, in the amount of $2 million per occurrence.
Do you hear a motion on municipal order 0326012018?
I'll move to accept this resolution for discussion purposes.
Motion made by Commissioner Terry, seconded by Commissioner Cottle. We're in discussion.
Mr. Dexter, do you have any thoughts about what this might cost someone for $1 million?
I'll say that as far as commercial general liability or the alcohol liquor liability policies, those limits are somewhat standard in the industry. So if you're looking at a commercial general liability, it would be difficult to purchase one that is less than the amount that is stated. I'm sure you can. I mean, it would depend upon the type of event and the insurance carrier as for the specific rate. But for a special liquor license through, if you already have a general liability insurance program, those are typically for a special event. Ron may be able to speak to that. I mean, it would be less than $500, certainly.
Usually less than $200. More recent quotes have been $180 for liquor liability and the $2 million limit. I'm not sure of the commercial general liability, $1 million, but it's a reasonable extension. Many times, if you have insurance, they extend an endorsement at no charge to an additional insured.
Usually it's similar to, like, if you have a homeowner's policy, it's sort of like a rider on that, and it may or may not cost that person out of pocket.
Typically, it doesn't cost
It does
in
not?
terms of extending your homeowner's policy.
But if I was going to have a liquor event at the Community Arts Center.
Probably talking about $180, $200,
Okay.
probably.
And that's for that one day?
For the event.
6-hour event.
And it's typically what people who hold weddings or other sorts of host liquor situations do provide in order to protect themselves. And so it's kind of a standard coverage. Now, I will say, if I can continue just a moment, Stephen, I'm not sure if one resolution like this can address each and every circumstance that may arise. Our conversations were over the fact of the potential liabilities in the Community Arts Center or our new water treatment plant, where we might have requests for people to use those facilities and to make sure that they shouldered a portion of the liability to basically protect the city, in those instances. But the thought occurs to me as I read this here tonight, what about those incidental uses by a citizen, for example, of Whisker Park? Are we contemplating requiring the extension of homeowner of the $1 million general liability in those instances or not? And again, one document is hard to cover everything. I personally can see where it would be a requirement, and these are applications reviewed by the police chief and myself in terms of requiring or perhaps not in some very limited circumstances. But I guess that's the question.
Some of these are so fact-specific, it's easier to cover the situation where you may have a private group wholly renting either the Community Arts Center or needing space at the water treatment plant, for instance, one of those types of situations. Whisker Park may be a little bit trickier depending upon how public the event is and whether the city's insurance just naturally would flow from it. I mean, obviously, if alcohol were involved, it would certainly be required, but otherwise the city's policy may be sufficient for a general event that's open to the public. But if it's a closed event, then it becomes somewhat different. So this is meant to be a minimal amount and is not meant to strip discretion of staff, but simply to set a minimum level of insurance required for what I would consider a closed event or semi-closed event where someone may pay to attend, or a private party, or things of that nature.
I
So-
think,
Oh, sorry.
ladies first.
So if an entity wanted to have a meeting or a luncheon at the water treatment plant, would this be required?
It would be.
Okay.
It's no different now when the city holds its retreat at Center College. These same policies would be in play. The city would have to abide by a rental agreement, and in fact does, to add the college as an additional assured on the city's policy to even meet or step foot onto their campus. So these types of things are not an oddity in the private sector at all. Matter of fact, as a risk management, I would say there would be no corporation or entity that would allow any type of event to be held on their premises without a mandate for this minimal type of coverage. And the city should be no different. Sure.
So we haven't been requiring this, so.
No, that's not, the city has been requiring it in certain instances, but it's been more discretionary at staff, and so, which sometimes leads a gray area of saying, well, can't you just cover us, kind of situation. Okay. So this is a written policy with the intention of being more equitable amongst the people who may be renting or leasing city-owned facilities.
Okay.
I appreciate Ron bringing up his point, because I kind of looked at it the same way. And so I might beg for some wording changes here, because my little notes were, if you're going to have a kids play over at Wisiger Park, or we're going to have a fun run, throwing liability insurance on that type of activity is just adding to their cost. And we have waivers for fun runs, and that might be something to consider. What do we need liability insurance for, and what do we just need to waiver out on?
Waivers are sufficient in certain measures, but they rarely create liability protection as thought. So the question on who should bear the burden in the event of an injury, if the city is not running the event, I would venture that the public and its tax dollars should not bear liability for a privately run event. So in the event of every event is fact specific, and if you're going to have a play, if it's open to the public at Wisiger Park, that could be deemed a public event, and you may be able to get coverage through that event or through the city's policy. But this is geared to more closed endeavors.
And that's the way it sounds. That's why I probably am going to say we ought to beg for a little bit better word change, a little bit better clarification again. This takes me back, way back to when we wanted to put a skateboard park in this city, and where would the liability be? And so it's kind of a similar thing. Somebody's got to.
Well, I would say it's not similar at all in the fact that the skateboard park would be a city-owned facility, and it would be open to the public, and the city would have special insurance that it pays for specifically for that event. Now, if you were going to have certain birthday parties, for instance, or things like that, and alcohol is going to be served or something like that nature, obviously you would need to have special consideration of what liability insurance may be required. But I think this is a good basis. I tend not to try to be too specific, because the more specific you are, then by implication you are going to leave out something that you meant to include. And so by setting a minimum basis, staff is saying these limits are going to be required essentially if the city's coverage won't come into play. And they certainly wouldn't with any alcohol event. And they certainly wouldn't come to any private event that would be held at the water treatment plant or the community arts center or any other facility for that matter.
Mr. Dexter, if I may ask a question on your basic point. And our commissioner's point about maybe a refinement, it might be clear if the resolution read prior to the approval of an application to rent or use of city-owned properties or facilities, the addition of the words by a private party.
That could probably be done, but what, for instance, what if you had a public entity who was going to rent your facility? I mean, would you not require insurance in that event? For instance, if you were going to have the Bull County school system or the Danville school system lease a facility, in that event, wouldn't you still require insurance? And I think the answer to that question is yes.
That is the answer.
Yeah.
Well, okay, clear as mud.
Yeah, well, it's,
Yeah.
you know, it's good discussion, though, yeah. Yeah,
Any
I
further,
was-
any further discussion, Mr. Atkins?
No, I was just concerned when I saw the million, 2 million. Last time I did one of these things, it was almost $700, but it was for a 3-day event, and there was some risky activities taking place, so I understand why it was. They were all legal, but they were risky for kids.
So just to kind of help me out, what's currently happening is we have a lot of fun runs at, let's say, Millennium Park, or we do have those kids' plays that might happen at Wisiger, and are those going to be excluded from the liability insurance then?
I think a kid's play that was open to the public there would be included in the city's general liability coverage on its face. I can't imagine that would be excluded to any degree. I mean, because that's what the park is for.
Okay, so if we go to Wisiger and to Millennium, and if you got that shelter there that gets rented out for family picnics, let's say without alcohol, because that certainly complicates that, but just a family picnic, Easter egg hunt, or fun runs, where do we stand? Where do you think we stand there?
That would be considered a normal park activity.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I thought I heard you say, but I'm not sure that I'm clear on that in this document.
Sure.
Any further comments? Seeing none, Chair will call the question. All in favor of the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. I
Aye.
guess I should say municipal order. We had one nay vote. Item 13, property demolition list discussion. Mr. Dexter.
Thank you, Mayor. I need to actually add one item to the agenda, and if you wouldn't mind, I'd rather take it first, as the condemnation discussion is somewhat lengthier. Ephraim McDowell Hospital has requested that the city consent to its subletting 5 of its reserved spots to Farmers National Bank in the parking garage. They currently lease 160 spots in the parking garage, of which 79 are specifically reserved and 81 are unreserved. So Farmers Bank and Ephraim have worked out an arrangement amongst themselves. They need 5 spots. Ephraim is willing to give them. And so your written consent is needed to, as per the terms of the lease. And this would apply to those reserved spots, not the unreserved spots. So just by voice motion and approval, we would need the city to consider consenting to that sublease.
Do I hear a motion to that effect?
Yeah, I'll move to.
Second. Whichever, I'll do.
Oh, I thought you were gonna, go ahead.
Do what?
Nothing.
Motion made by
I
Commissioner
move that
Connell.
we approve the 5 spots to be sublet from Ephraim McDowell to Farmers Bank.
And second by
Second.
Commissioner Atkins. Discussion.
I should note too that Farmers Bank is already a tenant in the parking garage and already has a lease with the city. So they'll be familiar with the terms and conditions
So
of the
we're
lease,
just transferring.
essentially.
And I should disclose that I have a familiar relationship with somebody at Farmers Bank, but I don't think that precludes me from voting on this
It
particular
does not, but thank you for your
Unless you're gonna get one of the
clarification.
new lease
Plus one of
parking
those
spaces,
parking
right?
spaces is yours.
for twice the price, yeah.
Just kidding.
We have a motion and a second. You need to vote on that.
You do, please.
All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Continue, sir.
Thank you. So as promised, I prepared at your request a summary of research and evaluation of condemned properties, and some of which have been demolished, some of which are subject to demolition orders. And I have arranged them in this report in no particular order, other than that the first 5 are liens that are in excess of $5,000, and the remaining 2 are simply properties that you asked to be considered on the list. And so again, they have all been condemned, some of which have already been demolished, some of which are scheduled, subject to demolition orders, but have not yet been raised. And this was prepared with the intention of providing you with the information to make decisions prior to instructing staff on how to proceed. When we see things that have been on the condemned list since 1989, and you have the question, why has no action been taken? I think the report will be evident to you why no action has been taken, but you have discretion as an official to instruct us to act accordingly. It may not be in your financial benefit to do so. Now, there may be other public purposes served in proceeding on certain properties, but you should know that they will not cash out as a net neutral or net benefit to the city. It could be a net loss, but you may garner the public purpose achieved by the expenditure as a benefit. That'll become more clear to you as we review the properties. So without further ado, we'll begin. I'll start with 318 Cowell Street. It's owned by Lisa McManus. And there's some particular information here that I tried to provide the same amount of information for each property in my research of them. When it was acquired, where it's found, the deed is filed, the PVA map number, things of that nature. I want you to know it's valued by the PVA at $8,000, so that's what the taxes are based upon. City has 26 liens on this property, totaling $17,000, a little over. And so you can again see the problem right off the bat. The amount of the city's liens far exceed the taxable value of the property and what you may expect to receive upon its sale. There are other lien holders, however, on that particular property. Danville Schools holds 7 years of delinquent property taxes. Community Bank Shares holds another delinquent school tax bill. Central Kentucky Tax Acquisition holds a judgment lien, as does Ephraim McDowell Hospital. And J.P. Morgan Chase is the mortgage holder on the property. Property was condemned and demolished by the city in November of 2016, so it is in fact a vacant lot at that address. I included pictures of the houses to stir your memory or nostalgia, depending on how you look at some of them.
Excuse me, Stephen, may I interrupt just a moment?
You may.
If we do nothing, then what happens?
Well, you're seeing the lender, in this case, has chosen that very path.
Right.
To do nothing.
Right.
So the bank has made a decision not to proceed because it's not cost effective for them to do so.
Right.
And so the property would stay abandoned, because in fact it's not there, so it would remain a green space, and if not taken care of by the fee simple landowner, the city would probably continue to maintain it once the grass and weeds exceeded a certain level, thus incurring more maintenance liens for generations to come, or at least years to come.
So let me throw this out here. I mean, if we had some unsightly mess, we'd go out and clean it up. We got an unsightly mess. If we don't clean it up, who will?
Probably no one.
Then I would like to make the motion, without going through each one of these individually, I'd like to make the motion that we proceed on each of these. That may be too broad a brush, but
no,
I see no point in going through them one at a time. The conditions are the same.
Some of them are. Some of them are more, I would consider, ripe for foreclosure than others. Only like in this case, when you have this many tax liens from a number of parties, I would just want the commission to be aware of this. In the event that you will instruct us to proceed, what happens is we would get involved to seek the property's sale by the master commissioner, at which time, unless the property sells for a value that is equal to or greater than the city's liens, and in this case, all tax liens, which is a big number, so that won't happen by all likelihood, then the city will, in fact, be losing money. So you'll be in the private sector, you'd be saying you're throwing good money after bad. But you're not trying to recoup a dollar here, what I'm hearing you're saying. If your mission is to simply clean up and you understand that there is an expense and somewhat significant in some situations, if you're willing to bear it, then so be it. But if you're not, I don't want you to have the impression that the city will recoup its liens in these situations, because in the vast majority of the ones presented to you tonight, they will not. They will be a net loss, and some of them somewhat significant. Because what happens is, let's say that property, 318, the lot itself sells for $10,000. Every tax lien that's on the property, we would add those up to figure out everybody's prorated value of that $10,000. So the city, if it holds 25% of the total amount of liens, could walk away with $2,500, and your court costs and loans and processing the whole thing could be $3,500 before you even get to the recovery of the lien. So you just need to know going into it that you will not recover from a financial standpoint.
But the other side of that is, this lot gets into the hands of someone who will probably clean it up, possibly build another house.
Put it back on the tax roll.
And put
You
it back
hope.
on the property tax.
Right.
You hope. That's right. That's the hope. Sometimes that does not occur. I mean, the other realization is that that does not always happen. Sometimes properties are acquired by individuals who still won't maintain them. So there's no guarantees in the business, but the house has at least been raised already. So the largest part of the nuisance has, in fact, been abated.
But it's not doing anybody any good.
I'd like
right
to
now.
make
But it's
the
not.
motion that you proceed on each of these.
And do you want to make that at the discretion of staff? What you're talking about is somewhat of a massive undertaking. I'm not saying that we can't do it. I'm happy to do it. But as far as the priority of the properties that are involved, I mean, are you leaving that to my discretion or the city managers, or who's going to make that determination? Because we probably won't file 7 simultaneous lawsuits.
I'll let you all work it out. I think this commission made a statement about 2 years ago when House Bill, what was that, 422, came down and gave us additional enforcement authority, and I think this commission said we want some of these vacant, dilapidated properties cleaned up.
And Stephen, before I could vote for or against his forthcoming motion, I'd like to know which ones have already been taken down, and also would like to know if any of them have current residents residing in them.
Sure. I've noted in, which I know this is fresh to you tonight, so that's why I thought you might want to take it for review prior to making the decision, or we can still proceed tonight if that's your desire. But, for instance, 318 Coel has in fact been demolished. 211 North 4th has been demolished.
It actually burned.
Yeah.
Is that
Right,
the one?
right. Well, the remains were in fact
Okay. That's what I thought. that
demolished.
was.
After the fire, there remained a significant safety hazard on that property.
Number 5 has.
The East Martin Luther King Boulevard property is in fact still standing. The 702 Perkins Avenue is still standing. The Old Shakertown Road property has in fact been demolished. 206 North First Street remains, as does the Wilderness Road property.
To Mr. Atkins' questions, are any of these inhabited?
They're all condemned, so they should not be inhabited. I've not done site checks, but they should not, no one should be living them. When in fact they're condemned, the city's saying they are inhabitable.
Do
Yeah, I
they-
know we say that, but
There have been instances where people have been in
yes.
condemned properties, but I don't, that's true. There's no electric, there's no water, there are no utilities. So if
Not
they're,
to say there's not squatters there, but
that's right.
there are not.
they are truly
technically.
unfit for habitation as deemed by the code enforcement staff.
So my question is, do these,
Second to my motion, then we can.
Oh,
you made a motion? Oh, I'll second that. My other question is, do these have to be demolished before we can move forward? Can you just move forward as they are?
Well, that's part of the consideration before you, is that there's two options in some instances for the ones that still remain. The city could demolish them and then, in fact, foreclose on those costs as well. The city could also, in some instances, sell them as they are if the liens allow them to, and that applies to all of them but one. Meaning the one on Old Wilderness Road, which I discovered that there was some confusion on the ownership of that property, and that's the one that's been on the city's condemned list since 1989, and as often gotten, chuckles from people, why is it still there? Well, it was actually foreclosed on, the city was a party to it, and it sold in 2012 to, I believe, someone else who lives on Old Wilderness Road, the Burtons, and I only discovered that by review of the circuit court file because they never recorded their deed. So in essence, in that property, the city's liens were wiped away by the foreclosure lawsuit, and it sold for $100. So in order to protect your lien in a foreclosure sale, you have to be prepared to bid at least your judgment amount. Or else, like in this case, it sold for $100, meaning all the tax holding entities were just left holding the bag. But the property has not been brought up to code, but the city has in fact no lien on that property to foreclose. So in that instance, you would have to demolish it in order to have a lien to foreclose upon. That's the only one that's in that unique circumstance. But the rest of them, which, would be, I think, 3 others, you could potentially just foreclose on as they are.
Okay, I don't see the reason to incur more cost by demolishing in order to
I guess
try to recoup
the only
that
reason
cost.
you would do so if you felt like the blight was significant enough to proceed. You'll know in our not so recent history, we have examples of property that was on the condemned and demolition list and yet was sold by the master commissioner to an owner who did nothing to bring them to code. So again, the city can go through the process and still not get a desired result. And that's why you just need to be fully informed in knowing the risks of proceeding in litigation. The only way to know that the job is certainly taken care of in a manner that is satisfactory to you is to proceed with knowing what the end will be from the beginning, which would be to demolish the property if, in fact, you view it as such a blight where that's a necessity. But there may be instances where you don't feel that way. And that's where the discretion comes into play, and that's where I don't feel comfortable, and I know staff won't feel comfortable making that determination. Staff is comfortable saying it's so unfit that it needs to be demolished, but that's not to say we haven't had people bring demolished properties on the demolition list up to code, because that has in fact occurred.
Do you need a motion on this tonight?
No, I don't. I prepared this as promised upon your instruction to review each of these properties in particular, and I'm happy to take your instruction on how to proceed with them individually or collectively at any time. But I wasn't expecting you to take action tonight because I thought you might want to take it with you, but I'm certainly happy to proceed with your instruction if you're ready to give it.
Well, friendly amendment, anything you want to add to it?
Well, I personally would like a chance to, I'd like to go drive by them again. It's been a while since I have, and I don't know if that'll change anything, but some of them, just by the pictures, I think it would be a shame to incur the cost to tear them down when it looks to me like they have some sort of rehabilitation potential, as they are. So, I don't know. There's no good answer. There's no, I guess, foolproof answer. It's a risk either way you go. So I kind of want to take some time with it before I just said proceed on personally.
And the tough one you're going to have to consider is honestly the one on Wilderness Road, because you don't have a lien to foreclose on. So you either have to decide if it will remain on the condemned list and demolition order list, or you will demolish it, because in that situation, you have no other option.
I'm gladly withdraw my motion with the caveat that we do whatever homework we want to do, and let's come back at the next commission meeting with some kind of motion.
Okay.
Clearly,
Fair
doing
enough.
nothing is not acceptable.
I do agree with that.
Yes.
Stephen, which one you say has no, city has no lien against one of them?
That's the one on the number 7. That's 134 Wilderness
But all
Road,
these other people do.
the very last page. The city's liens were extinguished from a 2011 foreclosure case, and that's when the Bobby and Mary Burton purchased it from the Master Commissioner, but their deed was never recorded, so for whatever reason. There's now a law requiring foreclosure deeds to be filed within 30 days, I believe.
So what does that mean if their deed was never recorded?
Well, there's a host of issues with that, but first of all, I mean, they are the record title owner, per the records in the county clerk's office, is still Gladys Bryant. But if sued, her defense would be, the property's foreclosed on. I have no interest in it anymore. The solution is you would have to probably join her to the lawsuit and join the Burtons to mandate or require them to file their deed to have their interest of record. You have to record your deed to, in fact, put people on notice and be able to file valid liens.
So you're saying since 2012, someone's been maintaining the yard and the weeds and all that good stuff?
That's correct.
So you withdrew your motion?
I did.
And I will withdraw my second.
So in giving it more thought, Counselor Dexter, how much time and trouble is it to find out what the other lien holders, what that cost is? Is that something that?
How much each lien is?
Yeah, if I were, you never know how things are going to work out, but just kind of running through here math-wise, if just the city liens versus the PVA value, if it came out that way, per the mayor's first recommendation, we would have been ahead $18,000, so it wasn't that bad of a loss. Of course, we don't know how things are going to turn out, and I don't know what the other liens are.
No, you wouldn't have been ahead.
No.
That would have been a loss to you.
Not the way it looks to me.
Which one are you talking about?
The city has 17,000 plus worth of liens. The property's valued at less than $10,000, and the city's.
That's on one. I'm talking about the broad brush. If you go through it and do a whole math on all 7 properties, yeah. That was your recommendation. So I ran through there, and it came out that some of these properties you would win on if everything worked out.
Oh, I see.
Overall, it would probably be a wash.
Well, if you
I don't know that I'll say this. I did not do a calculation of every other taxing entity's total amounts of liens. I think it would be an untrue, it would not be correct to assume that the city would come out ahead at all collectively on these. And I'm not sure exactly how you may have garnered that impression, but because I didn't calculate the total amount of county liens, the amount of city school district liens or judgment liens on all of these.
And that's why I said all you had was a city, so we don't know what the rest of them are. I guess I was just kind of looking at it from a standpoint of, yeah, it probably is a losing proposition, but if our point is to clean up, how bad does it hurt? And it might not hurt as bad as we think it does if we have all the facts in front of us.
Commissioner Siri, were you using the PVA value in
Yes.
your calculations?
Yeah, that's all I have.
Okay. Yeah, we're not gonna get PVA value out
No,
of it, no.
'cause these are, they're essentially gonna go to auction and you get what you get.
And that's not,
Let's do our homework, but
Yeah, that's right.
regardless of the money, our job is to
Clean it up.
clean it up.
That's right.
Our job is to enforce the law. We're going to talk about it next meeting. Do we have a need for an executive session, sir?
Yes, sir. I would request the commission meet in executive session to discuss the issue of property acquisition.
Do I have a motion to that effect?
I'll do it. I move that we go into executive session regarding a real estate property acquisition for which publicity at the present stage might or would be likely to affect the value per KRS 61810 1B.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Sears, any discussion? All in favor of going to executive session, say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. We are in executive session.
I move that we go back into regular session.
We have a motion and a second to go back into regular session. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. We are in regular session. Mr. Scott, would you like to report? That no?
We basically discussed a potential property acquisition and took no action on that item.
That's correct. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion made. Do I hear a second?
Second,
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Good night.
taking my cookies home.